Does God exist? It's a question that sparked countless debates, wars, and philosophical treatises. But what if I told you that over 80% of the world's population believes in some form of supernatural power?
Wow, that's a staggering number. Where does that statistic come from?
Well, it's from a recent global survey on religious beliefs. It really shows how integral the concept of a higher power is to human spirituality, doesn't it? But here's the thing. This belief isn't uniform across cultures or even within religions.
That makes sense. So how do people typically approach this question of God's existence?
Great question. From what I've gathered, there are two main paths people tend to take: reason and faith. Let's start with reason. Many turn to science and logic to try to prove or disprove God's existence.
But doesn't science conflict with the idea of God? I mean, we have the Big Bang Theory and evolution.
That's a common misconception. You see, science helps us understand how the universe works, but it can't explain the origin of everything. Take the Big Bang Theory. It's our best understanding of how the universe began, but it doesn't explain what caused that initial explosion.
Oh, I see. So there's still room for a creator in that scenario?
Exactly. And here's an interesting analogy. Imagine you're walking through a desert and stumble upon a sophisticated mechanical watch. Would you assume it just appeared there naturally?
Of course not. I'd think someone made it and left it there.
Right. The complexity of the watch suggests a creator. Some people apply the same logic to the universe. The intricate laws of physics, the perfect conditions for life on Earth. Could all of this be a cosmic coincidence?
That's a compelling argument. But what about the other path you mentioned, faith?
Faith. This is where things get more personal and less about logical arguments. For many, faith is about a deep, inner conviction. It's about experiencing something beyond the physical world.
Like feeling a sense of awe in nature.
Exactly. And for many, religious texts like the Bible provide a framework for understanding these experiences. They see these texts as a way to learn about God and find guidance for their lives.
But, and I hope this isn't too controversial, if God exists and is all-powerful and loving, why is there so much suffering in the world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's what theologians call the problem of evil. Different religions have different answers, but in Christianity, for instance, there's the idea that God gives humans free will, and it's our choices that lead to many of the world's problems.
That makes sense for human-caused suffering. But what about natural disasters?
Well, that's where it gets even trickier. Some argue that what we perceive as evil in nature is just the neutral functioning of natural laws. Others see it as a mystery we can't fully understand from our limited human perspective.
So, it sounds like there's a lot of room for doubt in all of this.
Absolutely. And that's an important point. Doubt is a natural part of the journey for many believers, and non-believers alike. But here's something interesting. Many religious traditions, including Catholicism, don't see doubt as the opposite of faith. Instead, they see it as part of the process of developing a mature faith.
That's fascinating. It's like doubt is the questions that drive us to seek deeper understanding.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important point, the relationship between science and faith. Contrary to popular belief, many religious traditions, including Catholicism, don't see science as the enemy. In fact, the Catholic Church has been a patron of science throughout history.
Really? I thought there was a long history of conflict between the church and science.
Well, there have been conflicts, sure. The Galileo affair is a famous example. But it's more complex than it's often portrayed. Many early scientists were actually priests or monks. The key point is that the official stance of many religions today is that science and faith can complement each other.
How so?
The idea is that science helps us understand the physical world, while faith addresses questions of meaning and purpose. Science can tell us how the universe works, but it can't tell us why it exists or what our purpose in it might be. Those are questions that religion attempts to address.
That's a much more nuanced view than we often hear in public debates.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important takeaway from this discussion. The question of God's existence isn't a simple yes or no issue. It's complex, personal, and often evolving throughout a person's life.
So after all this discussion, where do we land? Does God exist?
Well, as much as I'd love to give a definitive answer, I don't think that's possible. What we can say is that billions of people throughout history have believed in some form of higher power. For many, this belief provides comfort, meaning, and ethical guidance. But for others, a secular worldview feels more authentic and aligned with their understanding of the world.
It sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all answer to this question.
You're absolutely right. And I think the key is respect. Whether someone believes in God or not, their perspective is shaped by their experiences, their reasoning, and often a lot of deep reflection. It's not about proving who's right or wrong, but about understanding different perspectives and finding common ground where we can.
That's a great point. So what would you say to someone who's wrestling with this question?
I'd say embrace the journey. Whether you end up believing in God or not, engaging with these big questions can be a really enriching experience. It challenges us to think deeply about our place in the universe and what gives our lives meaning.
It sounds like there's no shortage of ways to dive into this topic.
Absolutely not. And that's what makes it so fascinating. This isn't a debate that's going to be settled anytime soon, but engaging with it can lead to profound personal growth and understanding.
So, as we wrap up, what's your personal take on all of this? Do you believe in God?
That's a great question. And to be honest, my views have evolved over time. I've gone through periods of firm belief, doubt, and questioning. Right now, I'd say I'm open to the possibility of a higher power, but I'm also comfortable with uncertainty. What about you?
I'm in a similar boat. I find the idea of a higher power comforting, but I also have a lot of questions and doubts. I guess you could say I'm on a journey of exploration.
And that's perfectly valid. The beauty of this question is that it's deeply personal. There's no right or wrong answer, only what feels true to you, based on your experiences and understanding.
It's been fascinating diving into this topic. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think the main takeaway is this. Whether you believe in God or not, engaging with these big questions can enrich your life. It challenges us to think deeply about our existence, our values, and our place in the universe. And in doing so, it can lead to greater empathy and understanding for others, regardless of their beliefs.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. Thank you for this thought-provoking discussion.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this exploration of life's big questions. Remember, wherever you are on your journey, whether you are a firm believer, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, your perspective is valid and worthy of respect. Keep asking questions, stay curious, and don't be afraid to engage in these big conversations.